There's been some more changes to the electrical schematic, which I thought I would go over real quick. The lines in purple and light blue are what changed, and what I discovered was when I had initially from the light circuit tied in the rear running light, the instrument lights, and the clock and voltmeter lights. And what I discovered was when I turned on high beam, I would lose the clock and voltmeter, the instrumentation, and the rear running light. And after looking into it a little more, it's pretty obvious why that was. What happens is it switches from the low beam circuit, which I've now put in blue, to the high beam circuit. So they're not turning on two lights, it's switching from the low beam to the high beam. Makes perfect sense. So what I had to do was pull out everything that was tied into the blue number 19 here, low beam light circuit, and run it separately. Then what I did was I tied everything else into aux 2. So, aux 1. Aux 1 can be programmed several different ways. It can come on when the key's on, it can come on when the ignition is on. I think there's a couple other options too. So I did it when the key switch is on, aux 1 is active. So you get 12 volts. So everything in purple then got tied together. So it comes up from the aux 1 and then it goes to the instrumentation lights, both the white lights, the tachometer, the charge, neutral, high beam. All these are tied together in the gauge cluster. So this is really only one wire that's leading to the gauge cluster. It is the green with the black tracer for reference. Then to the rear of the bike, I tied in, right now the only thing that's tied in is the running light. I have a separate connection that's going to go to the sidecar front running light, which will be on constantly, and the rear running light, which will be on constantly. Those are not yet hooked up. Then, as I mentioned in the past, I'm coming over to the coil for the kill switch relay, and as just a quick reminder, what that does is it reverses the action of the kill switch that's on the handlebar so that in run mode I have a connection which disables the kill input, and in off mode I disable the coil, I ground the circuit, and now I have the kill switch input. Then it comes up here and it ties into both the clock and the voltmeter. As I've mentioned in the past, the clock is a battery hog. You can keep the bike on a battery tender and it'd be fine, or you can ride the bike frequently and it'll be fine. Not 100% sure I'm going to use that. And the voltmeter, which is already hooked up. So luckily, the nice part about this is it was really easy to change. Because I have everything tied into a breakout board, then really all I did was cut one connection where this light was initially going to the breakout board to feed these other loads. Just cut the connector off of it, ran it right into the MotoGadget unit. That was done. Then I moved the other inputs so that the coil, which already had ignition power, was tied into these other units, and I renumbered, I think, one wire. Done. It was nice and easy. The only other work I had to do was up in the headlight bucket. I had inside the headlight bucket I had tied in these clock switches to 19. So what I did is I cut that and I reconnected it to the line that was coming from the instrument. So I did have to cut this line. I soldered in a joint and then ran it again in the headlight bucket to fire those two lights. And it was pretty much done. So it was a pretty easy change. Now, the only thing I have to really verify is that the charging system is hooked up correctly. Pretty sure it is. I actually had the bike up and running on idle today. When I first ran it, it was really running hot, so I shut it off pretty quick. Then I changed out some leaking vacuum lines. I backed off the idle adjust screws to make sure it was running a little bit on the rich side, and adjusted the timing. I think maybe my timing was a little bit on the retard side versus the advanced side. So I got it running on idle nice and pretty, and I checked voltage and I was only reading 12 volts. My multimeter is not the greatest multimeter, but I would have liked to have seen it. If I had seen 13 volts, I'd be pretty confident. At 12, not 100% sure, so I got a little more testing to do there. But that, I think, is probably maybe the final wiring diagram. Once I get it all complete, I'll post that, but it seems to be running pretty well. All right.